President Biden and former President Trump both secured victories in Michigan's primaries last night. Mr. Trump claimed 68% of the Republican vote over challenger Nikki Haley, and President Biden won 81% of the Democratic vote in that state, with over 100,000 voters casting uncommitted ballots in protest of the president's approach toward the Israel-Hamas war. For analysis, we turn to Republican strategist Kevin Madden, who advised Mitt Romney's presidential campaign, and Democratic strategist Faiz Shakir, who served as campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. It's great to have you both here. And Faiz, we'll start with you and talk about the number of uncommitted ballots in the Michigan primary. I've been talking and texting with Democratic officials and campaign hands today, and there are those who say that, look, this really shows that President Biden has to really fight to keep his coalition together heading into November. And there are other Democrats who say Michigan has a tradition of these ballot protests. Yes, the campaign needs to be aware of it, but they have 8 months to turn it around. When you look at these numbers, what do you see?
I see that there are people who, because of American democracy, were able to express their hurt and their pain about the Middle East war through the ballot box, right? Not only just in a protest, but also to vote. And I think for President Biden, he's got good information now, right? He's not only in strong standing with Democrats, but he knows that he's got some issues with young people, with Arab and Muslim Americans, with progressive left that he can fix and cure and heal. To his credit, you could imagine a different candidate who gave the stiff arm to, like, hey, if you don't like me, then go vote for Trump. He didn't do that. What he's maintained, I think, as a posture said, I want you in this coalition. Even if you might disagree with where I'm at right now on this policy, I want you to know that I am values aligned with you. So he's got some time and period. Ultimately, his biggest problem is fixing the policy. So you go in the State of the Union, he's working, as you know, working his brains out with the Secretary of State, trying to get a 6-week ceasefire and a hostage release. If he can do it, I do think it'll help so much. And that's what people are asking, because it's not as if the movement has like specific concrete solutions attached to it. They're saying, do something, hold Netanyahu accountable, show us that you hear and feel our pain.
And Kevin, let's talk about Nikki Haley, because she is still in this race after suffering 6 stinging defeats. What's her end game at this point?
Well, I think the end game is actually a long game for Nikki Haley. There is a great value, I think, if you look at the trajectory of where the party's going, in Nikki Haley being the presumptive frontrunner for 2028. And that's, I think, where her campaign is actually going now. They spent a lot of time investing in the infrastructure and growing her national profile. And, you know, campaigns never really run out of reasons to run. They only run out of money. Her donors have actually still stepped up and funded her campaign to this point. And I think that's one of the things that she's going to continue to do, to try to be a voice in the party and also set herself up for a potential 2028 run.
Could she stay in this all the way to the convention? Because there are Republicans now who say that, look, if she shows up with a certain number of delegates, that allows her to exert more power on the convention floor.
It's hard to see, because I think the resource question gets more and more difficult when you don't have any really delegates to show for your work and a real path to victory at a convention. So I think that'll become a difficult sort of consideration with Haley and her supporters and her donors over the next few weeks.
Meantime, Faiz, the super PAC that supports Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they say they now have enough signatures to get him on the ballot in Arizona and Georgia. And Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin were states that Joe Biden won by a narrow margin. I think less than 30,000 votes, if memory serves. What does that do to his campaign, the Biden campaign, and how do they have to sort of course correct for this?
It's unclear exactly where RFK's votes will come from. I do think it's a hurt to Joe Biden, because my impression coming into this election is people know where they stand with Donald Trump. I think he's got a hard cap on the amount of support that exists for him out there. And if you're in the Trump campaign, what you're trying to do is peel off the votes from Joe Biden. So you look at, we were talking about Michigan, for instance. Last time, Biden got 2.8 million votes in Michigan. Trump got about 2.6 million. So if you're going in here now in Michigan again, Georgia, Arizona, you mentioned those states, those critical battlegrounds where the margin was even thinner. They know that they probably can count on some enthusiasm for Trump to reach that same number or around that same number. What they need to do is drive down Biden's number. And each of these third-party candidates' efforts is, I think, going to dilute and hurt Joe Biden. And so my impression coming into this is the more that RFK is out there on ballots, it's going to hurt our side, and I'm concerned about it.
And Kevin, Faiz raises the point about enthusiasm. Let's talk about enthusiasm for Donald Trump, because if you look at Iowa and track all the way to Michigan, Donald Trump is losing somewhere between 20 to 40% of the Republican base who say they're not going to vote for him or that they're not entirely won over just yet. What does that say about his strength as a candidate heading into a general election?
Well, I think in a primary perspective, he's still actually running one of the more dominant primary campaigns that I've ever witnessed in my time in politics. And we also, if we look back to 2016, Donald Trump won the Republican nomination by winning only 44% of the popular vote inside that fight. So he's in a much better position than he was in 2016, and he won in 2016. But there's still a but here, which is the profile of the Nikki Haley voter is crucial to Donald Trump winning in November. That Nikki Haley voter right now is more moderate, more pragmatic, probably more likely to come from these suburb areas. If you look at the Michigan results, a lot of Nikki Haley's stronger counties were those collar counties around Detroit or around Grand Rapids. Those are the crucial areas for winning that state in November. So Donald Trump has some work to do. He can't let those voters stay home. He can't let them become never Trumpers. He has to get them to the point where they're going to essentially be nose holders. Well, they may not like Donald Trump, but he's better than the alternative. He's better than Joe Biden. That's going to be the charge and the challenge for the Trump campaign from here, all the way from here to November.
And looking ahead to tomorrow, there's going to be quite the split screen with both President Trump and Donald Trump at the southern border on separate trips. Aimed at sort of touting their different views on immigration and their solutions for the southern border. Can Democrats in this election cycle, do you think, really chip into the polling advantage that Republicans have on handling border security?
I mean, if it's an immigration election, I think it won't go well for Joe Biden. I mean, one of the things he's trying to do with this visit, I think, is to decrease the salience of the issue. It is increasing in salience. The Gallup polls indicate that this is becoming a greater concern for people of both parties, partly because of reality. I mean, as more and more mayors across America are dealing with it and trying to figure out housing and all kinds of employment practices and how you'd have the funds and the resources to deal with them, it's becoming a serious problem. It also is an economic problem. One thing that Democrats haven't often talked about is the corporate exploitation of low-wage worker. I think it is a message that could resonate with a lot of people. However, if you think about this split screen, they're trying to decrease the issue salience. What Biden wants is this election to be fought on democracy, on abortion rights, on even core economic issues that distinguish him and Trump. And I think by going to the border, he's saying, hey, don't know that if this is a major issue, I'm on it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as Georgia Governor Brian Kemp says, every state now is a border state. How is this manifesting in the election?
Well, it's the number one issue right now. That's one of the things that's interesting is how much it surged to the top of the issue priorities for many Americans. An 8-point surge. Gallup came out with a poll yesterday. It was an 8-point surge just over the last month. So I think you're right that if this becomes immigration is a top issue like that, and it becomes a referendum on the Biden record on immigration, it's going to be a very, very difficult challenge for Biden to overcome a lot of the negative views that many voters have about this. And I think particularly in these swing areas of battleground states around the country. If you think about the suburbs of Atlanta, the Maricopa County in Arizona, even as far north as in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those suburbs, border security is a huge issue for those voters. So I think it's advantage Trump on that.
Kevin Madden, Faz Shakir, thank you both. Great conversation. Appreciate it.